All right, I'm just going to go and, but is this clearer than I normally am?
It's about the same. How am I sounding?
Yeah, perfect, perfect.
I'm in a different room that's quite echoey.
Yeah, okay. All right. No, this actually, I see what...
I see you've had a good haircut there.
I have, I'm embarrassed to say that I used some wax from my son. My son uses wax, and I put the wax in, and I look like I'm from The Sopranos now.
Oh, you look pretty damn waxed.
Waxed. Thank you.
Good
Wax
morning,
on,
everybody. Morning.
Hello, Queen.
Hello, Tilly.
Okay. Right. So I think there's a way that I can set this that all participants can just come in as they need to. Hey? Enable waiting room. If I remove enable waiting room, am I right that everyone just comes straight in?
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Okay. Great. Okay. We have a smaller group this morning, and we have one or two new people who haven't been before. So I'm just looking at Philip Ridgewell. Welcome. I think this is your first one. And there were two other new joiners who don't appear to have arrived as of yet. But just give people one more minute as we get everyone settled. Deep breath, David.
Oh. So just so everyone knows, I've put my back out. So if I'm squirming on the chair and everything, I'm also in a lot of pain.
Not because there's been a supervision moment which has rendered you in a state of pain.
Well, I've been under supervision for the past 2 weeks since the last call, since you asked me to bring this case.
Okay. Good. All right. So we're going to start now. I just want to check. Hi, Pam. Okay. Right. I think that's probably 3 more people, but I think we should start anyway. So just if I can ask you to just be reminded that everyone on the call is a professional, has agreed to maintain their ethical boundaries, and we will keep the name of the company and the individuals' names. We will not mention that, but if for some reason you do recognize the company and or the individuals, you can just message me privately, and offline I will help you with the ethical process that you can follow, just to ensure that you can manage that. And as I said previously, in most cases, that is not a difficult thing to deal with at all. Other than that, we will go for about 45 minutes with David Collins, who has kindly brought the case, and then we will open it up for broader engagement. You can type your questions. So we're actually going to go, because David normally is the curator or support. So I think we can manage, though, I can probably manage now. So you can type your comments or questions in the chat, and people can look at those, and I'll be looking at those as well as we go along.
Mark, sorry, the audio seems to be a little bit soft.
Is it soft? Okay, I had some tech issues, so I'm going to try this. This may help. And I'm had to switch from the one to the other. Right. Now, how does that seem to anybody? Is that any better? Okay. Great. Can someone speak so I can make sure I can hear you?
Can you hear me, Mark?
Ah, perfect.
What does he want to say?
It's almost like you're in.
fine for us.
It's almost like you're in my head.
Well, you've been in my head for a while.
Okay. Okay. Right. So David is going to précis the case, and if you can just introduce yourself a little bit, David, just for a minute or two. You know what you do, your background, and so forth, and then bring the case, and away we go.
Right. Okay, so good morning, everyone. I've been thinking about this a lot, and how to frame it and bring it here to all of you, and it's making me very anxious. So that's the first thing I want to I've been coaching full-time since 2008, when I left corporate world permanently and decided to go out and coach full-time since 2008. I'm nervous here. So come and help me, Mark. You're on mute, so I can't hear you. I can't hear you, Mark.
I was going to say, take a deep breath. You're perfectly fine. You've given me the case that you've got, and you did a good job. You need fear for nothing.
Hey, I fear for nothing. Well, yeah.
Fear for nothing. You did a good job on the case. Okay, it's an interesting
David,
case.
I love your honesty. I love your honesty, and you're in a safe place. Go for it.
So I love what I do. Yeah, I'm really, really passionate about what I do, and I really want to make a difference, and I love my career. So that's where the vulnerability is coming here. It's like I'm really scared that I'm going to be judged and told what I did was wrong, and to discredit all the thought that I put into this, and so I can show up as a professional. So I think that's what's driving it. Anyway, the client is it's an asset manager. In the office that I went to was in Johannesburg, but they're a global asset manager. And the brief was, I got a phone call, we're looking for a business coach. I found you on the internet. Will you come and coach our people? So I said, all right, well, let me go and meet the HR person and to go and see what the requirement was, what the brief was. And I sat with this HR person for about 45 minutes to try and understand what they wanted, what their expectations were, what they wanted they wanted two people coached that were, one was in the role of an asset manager and the fund manager, and the other guy was the salesman. Yeah, and the role is to go out and bring more wealth into the company, to put more wealth under management, and that was kind of quite easy. And then at the end of it, just at the end of it, the HR person said, listen, we've had coaching before, it didn't go very well. We've had we got some coaching students in from SACAP, and it didn't really work out very well, and we also haven't got much money to pay. We've got 1,250 an hour. Can you do this? Yeah. So I think, okay, well, I need the work. Maybe I can get to see these two people back to back, but let me do that. I need the work. Yeah, and that was the first red flag for me. Yeah, but kind of ignored it, and in hope tried to see if it would work out. So I then say, what you need to do is I need to have a chemistry session first with these two guys to explain what coaching is, what my approach is, what my style is, to see if my style works for them, and is this going to work? Yeah. So I meet with the first guy, the fund manager, and he's a big big white Afrikaans guy, strong male, and the brief was to kind of work on the way that he interacts with the clients when they come in, and he goes over the portfolio with the salesman or client relationship manager, yeah, and the tension between the two of them, yeah. So how could he get some emotional intelligence around the way that he was showing up, yeah. So he engaged in coaching, and I explained to him what it was and what the setup was, and he was good to go. The second guy took a bit of a time to bed down and to do the chemistry session. And when I did the chemistry session, I explained what coaching was, and to try and match his personality with the role that he needs to fulfill within the organization and what the organizational expectations are of him. And basically, the outcome is he must network within his own personal networks to bring wealth to be managed by this asset manager. Yeah. So he agreed to engage. Okay. And then I had a couple of sessions with them, and then I submitted my invoice, and it wasn't getting paid, and I then got a phone call. The original person that I dealt with, I couldn't get hold of. They'd gone to Amsterdam or something, and then I got a call from this other HR person that was the head of HR, and their words were, "Don't worry, we'll honor your invoice, it's coming." Yeah, and then it was settled. Yeah, so I carried on engaging and getting each individuals aligned to their personality, their role, how people might perceive them, what was going on, and the fund manager, the big aggressive Afrikaans guy, actually took one of his seniors into a room and said one day, "Listen, I'm really sorry, I've been a dick. I didn't understand what was going on." And the relationship started to improve within himself and with his colleagues. And so in my head, I think, oh, good, okay. So I'm starting to work systemically here. I'm starting to think about all the relationships and how they're going. And then the client relationship guy, who's a white, around 32-year-old young father, waspy, and his brief is to go into his networks and speak about money to get it into his organization. And he has...
Just to say, David, when you say waspy, not everyone knows.
White Anglo-Saxon Protestant.
Right.
Okay, sorry. Okay, and it's important for me, I believe, because the different kind of underlying cultures in the personal family life and how that could be clashing with what the organizational outcomes are. So I explained to him, so he was talking about, and I basically said to him, listen, you need to kind of, the organization wants you to work your networks, what's the struggle? And this guy's wife is married to one of the wealthiest guys in South Africa, and he felt really uncomfortable speaking to his father about, you know,
his wife is his wife's father.
His father-in-law.
Father-in-law is one of the wealthiest men in the country. Right.
And like I don't know how to broach this and all this. So we explored that. We kind of reframed it. I got the little book that they have that they talk about the company values and being a family and all this sort of stuff, and kind of saying, you know, but if you believe in your organization and you believe that they live in values and everything, why wouldn't you want to tell your friends about it? To like people that you care about. And so it's like a complete kind of cultural reframe for him. And then he kind of goes, oh, okay, when I look at it. So then I start thinking, all right, this guy's going to start to kind of...
David, let me just pause you there. and summarize back to you what I understand so far, and then you can keep going. So we'll deal with the contracting process of entry separately, because that's the key focus of your supervision, which is something in the way that you contracted and how it ended up. That's where you'd like the interest. But I think what you're stressing here is your value add. And so in client A, that was around the way he related to other people and his relational skills, and in particular, how people experienced him to be a negative person. And you already saw some change there, because he was approaching people in his relational network, apologizing for his behavior in the past and seeking repair and an improved state of rapport. And you were already seeing some outcomes there which were positive. In the other individual, that was a very different brief. The other individual, the brief was for him to leverage his network into one of the wealthiest families in the country to bring about assets to manage. And he was grappling with the cultural tension in what you call the WASP environment, white Anglo-Saxon Protestant, not to talk about money, we don't talk about money, and so forth. And the company kind of was hoping he would go and talk about money with his familial environment and bring them in. And his concern was a kind of value system concern. So you worked with him to say, do you really believe in the values of this company? And you really unpacked them, and he was able to connect with the positive and ethical values of the company, to the extent that he felt, okay, I've got integrity now. I can sell this to my familial network and feel positive about it because I believe in the company's position. And you helped him make that cultural alignment, that value system alignment, which enabled him to go and have those conversations. And you were seeing some progress there. So you were actually feeling very comfortable with the way that work was happening on those two clients. Would that be a fair summary? Okay.
That would be a great summary.
Okay, so I think that the key point in the case that you referred here is not so much in the value you were creating in your coaching with the two clients themselves, but in what was happening around the contracting and payment process and what happened subsequently, and the disconnect between the two. And that's where you're going to take us now. Yeah? Okay, great. So, and I think one of the things you left out, which you told me yesterday, was that when they originally contracted you, the HR person originally contracted you, said to you, look, we don't pay a decent rate here. And they had previously used these student coaches from the College of Applied Psychology. And you had said, look, I will accept it at this much lower rate if these two clients, if I can see them back to back. So I can come into the office and see them at the same time, will save me the double travel. And that was agreed. But that was also not then how it transpired. You ended up having to go twice. But you let it go. You didn't say anything, right?
Yeah, the reason I let it go is because I understand what the role is.
100%. 100%.
Yeah.
It was just you were hoping for it, but not necessarily.
I was hoping. I had a false fantasy, but when it didn't happen, I kind of go.
Okay, no problem. Keep going. Keep going.
All right. So in my head, I'm thinking, shit, I'm doing really well here. I've got a nice foundation. I've got rapport with each individual, rapport with each role, and this is good. Okay. Then I got a phone call from the senior HR person, and it took me off guard. And their words were, "Why haven't you spoken to their managers? Surely, if you were a proper business coach, you would have spoken to their managers by now. What's going on?" So I said, "Oh, okay. I'm gladly meet the managers. Great to find out what their expectations are for this. I'll address it immediately." Okay. So then I danced around a while trying to get time in these guys, the two managers' diaries. Yeah. So the one manager that I got, I said, "Listen, I'm coaching your guy here. Can I spend some time with you just to find out what your expectations are of the engagement? I'll fit in with you. Tell me, and I'm just down the road." Blah. So I get time in this guy's diary, and I walk in there, and this is the boss of the person that's waspy, yeah, white Anglo-Saxon Protestant, and his manager is a religious Jew. Yeah, that's the first thing that kind of hit me. So he's got a yummy on, and we start talking, and then he kind of gets like he doesn't say, but I could tell he's really frustrated that the guy that he's managing isn't working his networks. So then I'd kind of explain to him, well, listen, it's kind of quite different here. Like you on a Friday night, you go home and it's, you know, you meet with your community and you talk and you feel really, it's like a kind of a cultural norm for you here. You know, it's very difficult. And this is the strategy that I'm trying to work with here. And then the thing that's
just to finish your sentence there, the cultural norm you're referring to there, which you mentioned to me yesterday, was that, you know, in the Jewish community, speaking about business in your familial system there's a cultural norm there.
Yeah.
And you were showing him that in the coaching sessions you had with his direct report, in their social system, it's actually not a norm to talk about money. And in fact, it's the norm not to talk about it, which is what this guy had shared with you in the coaching.
Yeah.
And you were kind of working on the axis to bring about an understanding around that underlying cultural disconnect, given the task, which was to leverage that network to bring assets in.
Yes, correct.
Okay, keep going.
All right, so I'm trying to manage all this in my head. And then the thing that struck me from that session is a guy turned around and said to me and said, you know, this coaching is so much better than the other coaching I've got. I don't need someone to come in and tell me how to organize my calendar. Yeah, and his words were, I found this really beneficial and enlightening. And then in my head, I'm thinking, oh, good, gee, well, maybe I can get some more work here. But anyway, so I sat with this person for about 50 minutes, and then what I did in my invoice, I said, I'll just put down 30 minutes for him at the same rate. I'm having fun, like, okay. And then I met the other guy's manager, and I had 45 minutes.
Can I just ask you a question, just a small clarification question here? Your decision to make it 30 minutes instead of 50 in that moment, what mediated your decision to do that in that moment? And we don't have to go into it. I'm just curious. Why didn't you just bill for the whole hour that you were with him?
And this is where my personal kind of stuff comes in. It's like, don't worry, it's fine. Just, it's like, you know, I don't want to go into argument. Like, just.
Okay, so I don't want to go into argument. So let's bracket that at that time, there was a part in your mind that was saying, there's something going on here around billing. And okay, I'll do 30 minutes and maybe it'll be fine. Okay, keep going.
Okay. So I then meet the fund manager's boss, and the tension there is the relationship. So the junior fund manager, yeah, his aggression and all that. When the fund manager would bring in a client, yeah, the client kind of appreciated the honest aggression from the junior fund manager, because he knew where he stood. His manager was all kind of, you know, wasn't as direct. Yeah. So that was really interesting. So yeah, and I had a chat with this guy, and just to relieve some of his anxiety that he's kind of having in this whole environment. Okay. So then what happened is I then submitted, and I also billed half an hour for his time. Yeah. In hindsight, I should have added them all.
So you did the same thing. You went for the 30 minutes for that. Okay. Fine.
In hindsight, what I should have done now is build an hour and a half for both of them together.
Well, let's see. Keep going.
Okay.
Keep going.
Cool. All right, and then we carry on. I do a couple more engagements, and then I send in the invoice for billing the two managers. And then I get this phone call again. What are you doing? What is this invoice? Yeah, surely part of engaging with management is it is part of the contracting process. What are you doing here? This should be part of it. And then I said, well, listen, I'm already working at a well-reduced rate. My time is important to me, and I feel you should be paying it. And personally, what was going on for me when I got the call, it was like, oh, hi, how are you? And then this hit me, and it really kind of threw me. And I just remember feeling this anger and adrenaline coming up in me. It's like this is enough now. And I stood my ground, and I said, no, you need to honor the invoice. And then the HR person said to me, and I said, so where do you want to go from here? And then she said, well, we got two options. One, you disregard the invoice to the managers and you carry on as our preferred supplier. Or two, I settle both invoices and you terminate when you feel is correct. So from a self-esteem and a self-respect and a I don't know what, I took the second option. I said, all right, I'm going to take the second option. Yeah, I said, I'll take the second option. And I put down the phone, and then I then phoned Matt, yeah, to just kind of get some perspective here. It's like, Matt, this is what's going on. It's like, shit, I better reach out to some sort of supervision, peer support here, like what's going on. And the focus that we went to then is how do we terminate, yeah, with the two guys that I've already built wonderful rapport with. And so I had 2 sessions with them in closing out, yeah. And I just said, guys, sorry, this is where I'm at. This is where we are. What, yeah. So I had 2 more sessions, or 1 more session, I think. I had 2 sessions with the one guy, and then 1 session with the other guy. Yeah. And I put it both back to them. I said, this is a situation, this is my thing, you know, I can't.
And then since then, there's been no further work with this company?
No further work.
Okay. Now, and, you know, how's it left you? You know, what are your, let's just unpack feelings, just state the feelings you now have post that, and then also judgments / accusations that you are holding in your mind towards this company. If you can just state those that you're sitting with, because that's really an aspect of the supervision we want to go into, as well as trying to understand what happened here and how this could have been, how you could have done this differently, because you certainly, the coaching sounds great, but how you could have engaged differently in the broader system and had a different outcome, possibly, may not have had a different outcome. So if you just go with the first part.
Okay, so obviously I have lots of mixed feelings about it. Just kind of getting it off my chest here now and like kind of bringing it out here to everyone, there's a sense of relief. It's like, oh fuck, I tried my best, guys. That's the first thing. If I step right back and I look at the sort of as I had information around the company's history and tradition and how long they've been there and how what was playing out in me was a bullying that kind of goes down through the system. Yeah, from the founders, from the family members, that all kind of, there's this thing that goes down, and I was at the bottom of the chain getting squeezed, and yeah.
Right.
What they didn't see though was the value that I was bringing, and how the system has kind of shot itself in the foot again when it had an opportunity to kind of change, and that their lack of wanting to invest in kind of proper coaching and all that, and trying to get like students to do it. That was a setup that if I step
Particularly
back,
for a company with $20 billion under management.
yeah. And well, it was 10 million sterling, and when I found
10 billion sterling.
yeah, and that starts to
Yeah, it was like you couldn't reconcile that. It's like
guys like, gee, and I kind of worked out the basic kind of salary bill of the 6 players in the system, yeah, and that was about 6 million just on basic, yeah. And to kind of let that all go for 1,250 rand. It's like, guys, are you fucking mad here? Like, are you mad? Just the relationships that you're talking to each other better has put a return on the investment of like. So my judgment is this kind of petty tyrant HR person has destroyed the whole intervention.
Yeah. So if it was like a headline in a newspaper, it'd be like, petty tyrant HR person destroys asset manager's opportunity to earn an extra £1 billion in earnings in order to save 750 rand twice.
That's my headline.
That's your
That's my headline. And that's when I phoned Matt up and said, what's going on? So
okay. All right. And now you've been sitting with us, and it's still it eats you, and it continues to eat you. Okay, I get it. All right. Is there anything else? Should we start thinking together around this? Anything else around this you want to add?
Yeah, I just really want to feel supported. You know, I've really put my heart and anxiety on the table here. I've kind of shamed myself enough of all the mistakes I've made. And so that's
okay.
that.
All right, well, David, don't worry. I promise you, we'll look after you. Okay, you will look after you. All right. So the first thing is, I think, you know, from a coaching point of view, with these 2 individuals, it sounds like you did a fantastic job. I mean, the way you explain it and the work that you did on both counts, very clearly linked to value creation for the company and for them as individuals. You know, to the extent you engaged even further with their managers, you know, you took it into the relational system, and you have good reason to feel proud of the work that you did there. And there's no question that company got a massive practically free win off that intervention. I mean, in relative terms, financially, almost free. Okay, so I'm not going to focus on the coaching with the individuals themselves, because I think that the narrative that you had there, you felt comfortable with listening to it. It sounds like really good coaching too. I'm going to focus more on zooming out and thinking about coaching the system in this process, and sort of and I think you indicated that you already were kind of wise. You were already tracking what was happening in the system that you were engaging from the start, but that you bargained with it. I would call it bargaining. You did a kind of internal bargaining process. Some of it was in your private logic, and some of it was directly with the HR person. But through this bargaining engagement, driven primarily by your needs to grow your business development, to grow your business, and looking to get more work. Through that process, that the bargaining eventually resulted in a termination of that work, further work. So that bargaining process was not an effective process of bargaining. But I think I want to kind of maybe look at that idea a little bit more in a moment. But let's start with the notion of coaching the system as opposed to the individual. So if we go from the start and we work with the frame is, who is the client? Who is the client? And I know you're very familiar with this. And I think in this case, you right in the beginning, you were quite focused on the coachees as the client, and to some extent missed that the HR person talking to you in the initial contracting is also the client. Literally the coaching client. I understand, I'm being specific, that she is a coaching client. And you were very busy with bargaining to get the work there, and you related with her more as a sponsor, the sponsor of the work, the person, the manager of the work. You were very different though when you engaged with the managers of the two people. You could see there that you understood that they were also the client. You worked relationally on the axis, and you got very good results from that. I mean, to the extent that the one manager complimented you in an unsolicited fashion. So, but somehow the HR person you didn't see as the client. Her own frame, what she's subjected to in the system, and the way that she was engaging with you, and you didn't coach her at that point. You were purely in the contracting process at the task level. This is not that you didn't, not that you weren't noticing the issues. You did notice them very clearly, and so one of the things to just see here right from the outset is the way that the brief occurs. The way that you're brought in is itself already a coaching process opportunity, and you're coaching into the system. So what did she say to you? She said to you, we found you on the internet. She said to you, we previously used student coaches from SACAP, okay? And thirdly, we can pay you a very small amount. So these were 3 pieces of information that she provided quite openly to you. Internet location, student coaches previously that didn't work well, and can't pay you much. Right. What's missed in that moment? There was just an opportunity, I would call it an opportunity that was missed there, was to manage your bargaining strategy to get the work, and to just park it for a moment and to just coach into that at a system level by asking some more questions, some coaching questions, but at a system level. I understand. Okay, we something like, I understand so-and-so. It seems as if what I'm hearing from you is that that this company, this environment, has an ambivalent desire for coaching. It wants coaching, which is why you're engaging me, but at another level, it doesn't really want to pay for the coaching. To the extent that previously I'd even tried to use students, you know, a global asset manager, try to use SACAP students for coaching. And just to mirror back and say, can you help me understand what it's like for you to be an HR person being tasked with procuring this service, but also being constrained by this system, which is ambivalent about what it's worth and what they're prepared to pay for it. And I just want to, if you don't mind, understand what it's like to be in this role and to be constrained in this way and yet still want to procure it, and what has been happening. So that was now I say that may or may not have been successful. She could have just battered you off. You know, it doesn't always work that way.
So
but sometimes.
Here, if you want, Mark.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I don't want this to come across as justifying, but when I did see the HR person, I did have that kind of thinking, and I did kind of explain that your part. What are your expectations out of this? What is it you're going to want? How are we going to measure progress? What previous engagements around coaching have you had?
Yeah.
And another thing she said was, well, we put our senior guys through a coaching process, but we want something more for our junior guys. So in my experience in the past, that already creates they got better coaching than we got.
Right.
So I did have that conversation with her, and that can create systemic resentment, like how come they get better than me? Yeah, that's
yes.
So my thinking was, here's the HR client, and what was really frustrating is when I wanted to give feedback about the process of how it's going, was unable to engage. with that HR individual that I kind of contracted with, and the person that she was accountable to.
Right. So I understand that, and that's great. But I think what I was saying is that sometimes we miss the opportunity to coach the person themselves, to sort of offer a reflection that must be difficult for you to have to procure coaching with these constraints. That may have opened up something. So that's A. And maybe, as you say, there may not have been that opportunity, and you already did kind of try a bit in that, and you didn't necessarily get anywhere. But it's something to keep in mind for everybody listening. Okay. Always be coaching. Do you know what I mean? So one can only imagine that if we dream into the culture, this culture is one which is reticent to pay for development services for individuals, unless it's the most senior individual, something to this effect. So it has a particular ideology in the system around this, a kind of meaning making. It's got a meaning making around what is this really worth? How much do we pay for this? So that's the first part. I think the second part is the bargaining that you did, and how you said, okay, I'll go with the lower rate, and then can you do it back to back, and so forth, which is fine. I mean, you know, one makes a contract. If that's the contract you're prepared to make, so be it. So what I just kind of linked to is where the disconnect may have happened in your mind was that when the person phoned you and said to you, the more senior HR person, why didn't you contact the managers? Right? There was an opportunity in that moment as well. And the opportunity in that moment as well, which I understand that maybe you were so rattled by her call that you may not have had the furniture organized in your mind to be able to say it. So it's easy in retrospect. It's difficult when it's in the moment. Is to say, you're absolutely right. In the normal course of the way that I do coaching, commonly, that is, you're spot on. That is the correct way. And there is a reason why I never contacted the managers, which I can share with you now. And that is because of the contracting process that I encountered with your other person, in which there was this, very small purse that's available for payment. And I'm really doing the best I can from that. And the difficulty for me is that, I got the impression that doing more engagement, which would have obviously cost some money, wasn't really within your budget. And I actually think you're right. The right way to do it is to engage the managers, but my concern is that it's more costly, and I'm not sure there's an appetite in your system to pay more for that. And I respect that, because you've got your budget and you've got your constraints, and I'm just trying to work within those. But I would like to engage the managers very much. It is how I normally work, and I'm just wondering how we could do that on the kind of rate that we've got here, because that's going to be difficult. What are your thoughts? Now, that's super easy to do in retrospect, just to throw. When you get the phone call and so please don't feel that is super easy to do. And I'm going to share a story now of my own failure as a coach some years ago, prior to Investec, where I failed even more dismally, because when one gets the phone call, one is, it's very, very difficult to think. It's difficult to think in the moment. But just before I share the story, I'll just go to the third part. So then when you did see the managers, somewhere in your mind, you knew that there was a contracting there was a grayness around the contracting. And I suspect that because you knew that it was gray and tricky, and that you hadn't had this conversation with the second HR person, that mediated your 30-minute choice. It was one of the factors where you did the 30-minute choice, because you thought, ooh, I haven't actually explicitly contracted for this. I can feel I feel and know where the system is around this. Maybe if I hit them with the 30-minute instead of the hour, they will, without us having to officially have discussed it, they will feel a certain appreciation for my reduction, and there won't be a problem in paying it. I'm just guessing that somehow in the back of your mind may have moderated your choices there. Would that be a fair assumption?
It's a nice guess. I mean, you put it out there, I can look at it and go, oh yeah, maybe. I mean, there's always that kind of personal anxiety driven that not good, that's going to get found out, all that.
Yes, and I think so. All your own personal psychology around being good enough and being discovered, just sort of, you got sort of valence for that, if you like. You've got a kind of magnetism for any scenario which may position you as not good enough because you've got your own psychology around that, which is just amplifying it. Absolutely. I think then that when she did phone you and have a go at you for having billed for that, in that moment, the whole journey of bargaining moved from bargaining into anger. And that it was your emotional state of anger that got you to choose to say, pay it and I'm out of here. It was a little bit of a folding of your arms and kind of like, fuck you.
Yeah.
Okay. And then, of course, you had the exact response back. The response was mirrored back, which was, oh, fuck me. No, fuck you. You get this sort of,
I see it.
and then that's it, finished and gone. And it's a kind of lose-lose for everyone. You lost the work. They lost the good coaching you were doing. And she lost a good service provider that she actually had on a lower rate. And now she's got to go and find other service providers. So it was a total lose in the end in terms of further value creation, having actually had some very good work up until that point. So, So I just want to give a story around this, which happened to me as a coach many years ago. I was asked to coach a country manager of a technology business. And he contacted me directly himself. So he was the sort of local CEO of this technology business, but it was a global technology company. And he contacted me himself based on a referral of a colleague of his from another company that was using me as a coach. And I met with him, and right in the beginning, he asked for two things. He said to me, number one, I'm contracting you directly. I'm the country manager. I'll sign your invoices myself. I don't want HR involved. So he said to me. And the second thing he said to me is, if you are ever contacted by anyone from the company or in particular from HR, you need to tell me exactly what the nature of the engagement was and play open cards with me and what they're discussing with you, okay, if that's ever because you will be on the system. And exactly like you, I was like, oh, brilliant. That's perfect, right? When you're an extra, I don't have to deal with HR, which is a pain in the ass most of the time because it's this brokering control function thing, okay? I'm going direct to the head of the business, which is the highest ranking person who's going to sign off my invoices. Perfect. I don't have to have, I'll have no issues. Okay. And I really like, so what? Okay. Of course, confidentiality. Anyone who contacts me, of course, confidentiality, I will just share with him. And I thought this was a great deal at the time. And we did coaching for about six to 8 months. And it was going very well. Similar to you, I really was feeling very positive about it and getting a lot of good feedback. One evening, I got a call from a person who, hi, is that Marc? Yes, this is XYZ. I'm calling you from Europe. I'm the head of HR for EMEA for this company, Europe, Middle East, and Africa. And I want to talk to you about this individual who you're coaching. I can see that you're coaching this person. I want to talk to you about him if you don't mind. And she just went straight in once she established who I was. She went straight in because he's a high talent individual, and we want to move him. We are trying to get him to move to Belgium. I think it was Belgium. It was a Western European country. We're trying to get him to relocate with his family there to take over a much bigger business. And he's resisting it because he's happy in Cape Town where he was living. And, that's why I want to talk to you, to try and persuade him to move to Western Europe. And it's a much bigger role, pays more. He's a high talent, and that's why I'm phoning you, because I need your help. So I then, that was the same moment, a little bit like you. I was like, suddenly my contract that I'd made a long time ago kind of suddenly came into the foreground of my awareness. And I said the following to her. I said, okay, look, I've got an agreement with him, which he was very explicit about when he contracted me, that all conversations that I have with anyone in the company, in particular HR, I immediately just let him know about this. And you're okay with that, right? I mean, you're okay that once we talk now, I'm going to give him a ring and just say you phoned and you've said, can I help persuade him, and so forth. And then she said, if you do that,
Hello? What's going on?
oh, there he is. You've got your, is it your camera that's gone? Oh, you're back. Sorry. I'm just going to pin you. Okay. So David, so what I'm kind of going to say here is, what would have been a different way to respond in your conversation with her when she phoned to say, I can't pay this, why have you sent me this invoice, right? What were the alternative options that you had in that moment?
Hello? Shit.
David, are you there?
Yeah, my internet's just started to mess around.
Okay. But you can hear, but you can still hear.
It's coming and going. Let me stop my video. Well, I mean, I would love to have responded.
Is that any better? Can you, David?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Okay.
So let me just help along a little bit further. So how I wished I had responded, and again, it was I have total sympathy with your moment, because in that moment, it's really difficult to think. But how I wished I had responded is a little bit how I would offer you as a possibility of thinking about this.
Sorry, can you just tell me how you did respond?
I should have responded to this woman who phoned.
Mark, can you just tell me how you did respond?
Okay, so how did you hear? I said, so be it. I said something like, so be it. I've made my agreement and I'm going to phone him after this call. And she said, right, thank you, goodbye. And that was the end of the call. I phoned him and we coached a bit longer and a few more sessions. And then he said to me, I'm in a funny position to actually terminate now. And that was it. And I never worked with that company again. So how I wished I had responded to her is the same as perhaps we could dream into how you could have responded in that moment with this person. I wished I had said something like this. I completely understand why you are phoning me. And I fully understand the arm request for me to help you bring him over. And I can commit to working with you and help companies paying me. And totally, I can see why this company would like to leverage its talent in this way. And you understand your role. You know, this is your job. Your task is to move these individuals around the world for better value creation. So I'm on board. I'm absolutely on board. Pause. Then I would have said to her, but I need your help. I need your help because I'm in a tricky situation. The tricky situation is, and I don't know, it may have been ill-conceived on my part to agree this, is that this individual actually, I contracted with him when we started that any conversation I was going to have with someone from HR, I would tell him about right away. And I've got an agreement with him on that. And so I'm a bit stuck and I need your help because based on that agreement, you know, if I was to honor it, I would have to tell him that we're having this conversation. And I can totally see how that would put you in a position. And then it would be a difficult scenario. So I'm a little stuck here because I would like your help. Can we think together, you and I, on how to manage my agreement with him and the fact that I actually want to help you and the company, I leverage this talent. How do you think we can approach this together? That's how I would have that's what I wished I'd said. Okay. You know, which I didn't do because to be able to think with the front of your brain in such a high stress situation is incredibly difficult. In your scenario, when she phoned you, you may have considered the same response, the same frame. She would have said, listen, why have I got these bills? What's the deal?
Sorry,
And
Mark, I just missed what she said when you said, no, I'm contracted with him. What did she then say to you?
So what really happened was I said, I've contracted with him. She said, if you're going to go and do that and tell him that I have contacted you, you will not work in this company again, which is exactly what this lady said to you.
Okay.
It's exactly the same. Now I am an HR head. In my regular daily life, I'm an HR head. I've procured many services, and I can tell you that the reason I realized how wrong I was back then was only when I became an HR head. And then I realized, oh, this is my job. Oh God, now I see. And it made me think back to like, oh, I get the role. I get how we see the coach now. And I woke up to being in the system in this other role. And then I realized and for years afterwards, until I became a head of HR, it was actually not that long, it was about 2 years later, I judged her as being an unethical, tyrannical person. Now I look back and I see, well, she's just in a role. She's just doing her job, you know. So that's the reframe for you here, David, is that instead of the headline on the newspaper being tyrannical HR person destroys value for what you have is you have an HR person inside a system. And what's her constraint in this asset manager is that you can just imagine, let's just dream into how difficult it must be to be an HR person and be given these tiny purse strings with this low value for what you do. If you think coaching isn't highly valued, how do you think they value her role? And how well do you think she's paid in comparison to those that write the business? So what you see is you start to dream into the system and you see the individual in a role inside a cultural form. And suddenly you can understand why she's anxious and a little irritated that she's received this invoice. It's not because she's necessarily, although she could be, but it's not that she's necessarily the tyrannical HR person who's squeezing the budget, but that she's subjected to the same experience you're having in her role in a cascade of realities. And so the response to her could have been, you're absolutely right. I actually thought twice about sending the invoice because I kind of got the impression of how tight things are. And, now that you phoned me, there was a part of me that was kind of expecting you to call me, and because we haven't contracted for this. We didn't agree this. And I may have been a little presumptuous in sending it. I mean, so much so that I cut it to 30 minutes because I was feeling a little uncomfortable, you know, because we hadn't agreed this. So I totally get why you're calling me. And it's got to be difficult procuring coaching services when your constraints are so low. So I understand. And where I'm a little stuck, and I wonder if you can help me, is that, so I've kind of got to make a living as well. And, you know, my time is there. And so I'm not sure how I can monetize this for myself. And, you know, as much as I'm enjoying it and I'd like to do it, is there anything that we can do here? I don't know if there is, there may not be, but I'm just wondering if there is something we can do. And I totally understand where you're coming from. Now I'm wondering what the possible outcomes there would have been. They would have been different. I don't know. I also don't know in my scenario, but I'm going to pause there because I've done a lot of talking and just get a sense from you. What are your thoughts and feelings?
My thoughts, well, my feelings is one of relief. My first thought that comes up is like, oh fuck, it's all very well in hindsight, and the judgment that I come up with is to have compassion for all the different roles within the system and what that individual is going through around that. So
bingo.
That's how I'm.
That's it. So, and so you're there, you've got it. I mean, there's really nothing more from a supervision point of view that I need. You know, I think the moment you said, have compassion for the individual in the role, bang, you've got it. Because now you're working systemically and you're seeing everyone's in a role in the system and the system is driving those behaviors. And you also give yourself some compassion, if you don't mind. Okay. Because it is a massively tall order to be able to think in the moment when you're confronted with all this. And you've also got your own personal psychology in that and everything. And you really need to forgive yourself for, you know, the way that went down. The opportunity is that in the future now going forward, you are inoculated. See this as an inoculation injection for the COVID virus of not being compassionate to the HR person in his or her role. Because it can, you know, the next time that happens, this will be in the foreground of your awareness and you will be able to reformulate for it, which it worked for me. You know, I kind of am able to do that just because it kind of, once it wakes up, it's awake. The curse is gone, so to speak. Okay.
So I've lost the chat. If somebody could select the whole chat, all of it, and just repost it for me, that would be...
I'll do that for you now. So if I just do copy and I go everyone. All right, so what we're going to do now is, did they work, David?
No, I didn't receive it.
Weird. All right, don't worry, we'll come to it. What I'd like to do is open up now a little bit. So what we do now is just to hear from other people around this case. Now, there are many things to have discussed in this case. We really focused on honing in on that one aspect, but there may be other lenses and things to think about here. You can just you raise your hand or hit your button and engage on any comments you want to make or questions. Right, Edwin, go ahead. You're on mute. You're on mute, Edwin.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes. Where are you? You're in Harrow, eh? Yeah, Harrow Road.
Yeah.
How's the weather down there this morning?
It's raining today. Yesterday was awesome.
Okay.
Yesterday was awesome. So I'm not, as Mark knows, I'm not actually a coach, but I deal in similar organizations and I have similar situations. I guess everybody who's ever done business has had what you've had, where your contract isn't completely clear. There are gaps. It must always happen, and then you have to bill on those gaps. And you suddenly get, the other thing that is you suddenly get a call about it that you're not ready to take, because I've had that a million times, where I deal with children, a parent phones, and I'm quite excited about speaking about their child, and I get a call about a negotiation, and I'm not ready for it. And the thing I've learned to do, that I learned from a book actually, is to buy yourself time, to always say, I'm not I need to consider this, and I'll get back to you shortly. And once you buy yourself time, it gives you space to, like Mark says, rearrange the furniture in your head. Right. And you know, that has saved me so. It's just a strategy that has saved me so many times. I wanted to put it out there.
It's an excellent one. Thank you, Ed. That, again, you know, when we think about brain function, and I think that's actually the thing is, you look about, you know, in the neuroscience of this, when you're in a threat situation where someone's challenging you, you go into a threat situation, your frontal cortex is less engaged as it normally would be, and your executive functions are challenged, and you move into more binary thinking, either or thinking. And you can see in both David, your scenario, and in mine, when the previous one, we went straight into this binary thinking, either or, black and white thinking. And buying yourself time, which is very wise, Edwin, is very powerful, because it takes about 18 minutes for the cortisol levels to reduce, to return 18 minutes of calm. That's the average amount of time for the brain to return to its functioning, to allow for the frontal cortex to re-engage, to address the complexity of the situation, a both and a thing. And by buying yourself your 18 minutes, which means I get back to you in more than 18 minutes, you then are able to return with a more complex form of engagement. So that's a great one. Thank you. Okay. Lauren? And then Gabby.
Everyone. Thanks, David, for bringing place. I think it resonates with a lot of us. And I think just something that I feel is a big theme that has emerged, is the notion that value creation and revenue is in contrast with human connection and building relationships, you know. And I think it played out in this situation. I think it played out in the way in which you have to ask for money when you're building connections. It's played out with me personally, you know, where I've maybe built a connection with a coaching client, and then the contract is finished, and then the client, this happened recently, called me for advice, and I spent an hour and I didn't charge for it, you know. But then am I your friend? I'm not really. I'm actually working and contracting, and this plays out a lot. And I think also in your example, you know, I just said that there's this theme possibly, and Mark, you also alluded to it from an HR perspective, but there's this theme around integrating this human connection, and it's in contrast to revenue creation. And so you also probably felt that in how can I, exactly what Mark said, you know, I'm just kind of echoing it. How can I charge for this thing that's not really valued in this company, because this company is all about money and revenue creation. And I think that also played out on top of it. You know, it was less about you, and although we default to that, it was you in the system that doesn't value human connection and all of that culturally. As I'm making an assumption, but it feels that way. And I think that plays out a lot in the coaching realm.
And that's something that kind of triggers me, because that they have the book of the values and family values, and we connect, and the way that they're playing out is not like that at all. And I brought attention to it, and that didn't really help.
Yeah.
Deep breath, David. Deep breath.
It really triggers the activist in me.
The activist. Let's for a moment grab the word activist. You see, that's a role. It's the activist role, and one has to be super careful with taking on the activist role when one is coaching, because that's not the role of the coach. And again, it's that very difficult inner work to be able to hold back on one's other inclinations around us. Yeah. So, you know, and just recognizing it is 80% of the work of getting there. Just to know, look, I tend to be an activist. Hi, I'm an activist. I'm an activist, and here's my bottle cap, you know, for Activists Anonymous.
And activist. I really want to help you guys go well.
That's right.
Now, so why are you doing it?
Exactly. So just knowing you've got that inclination helps you to manage your role clarity in various contracting processes. Yeah. Okay, Gabby, I think you were next, and then Maha after Gabby.
You're muted, Gabby.
I was saying that the last part about the activist and taking up that role, it was valuable for me, having to manage that. Yeah, around boundaries. I think there were quite a few that resonated. I think that we've been talking about the organizational system, and for me, so much of this is around the global system. And that this comes, David, at a time during COVID where so much has changed, especially for us with independent businesses. And yeah, I'm going through a similar experience. I have written it up on the chat, and I've tried so hard to reframe this experience.
Tell us about it, Gabby. Tell us about the experience you're going through.
So it's quite interesting. It's work that I've done with a company based in Singapore. They've got a business in South Africa. I worked with the 3 directors. It's a family-owned business. And they then asked me they wanted to do a workshop in Durban so that we could look at role clarification, which seems to have been an ongoing conversation with them for the last 3 years, and nothing has happened. And I agreed to doing that. And then the father, who wasn't at the workshop, he phoned me and he said, please, can I rather come to Singapore to do the workshop, which I didn't want to do. Anyhow, I was very aware that I found it hard to say no to him. And then as it happens, COVID came. And so we're now doing the work online, and I'm doing a series of workshops with them. But what has happened is they have said that because of COVID, they can only pay me now a quarter of the amount for the workshop. And, you know, for me, it's much better for me because I didn't want to travel, and now I'm not going to travel. And then when I was speaking to them, I said, how's the business going? And they told me, no, they've like really pivoted into PPE deals, and they made $100,000 on one deal. So this is now happening in the same conversation where we're talking about this. And for me, I think why I've taken the work is definitely because of this context. And I've reframed it around they paying me for learning as well how to work during this time. And trying to do that, but I find that it comes and bites me. Because when I see themes coming out in the organization, or where they're treating other people, it does feel like they're trying to screw people. And I'm now battling to separate. I feel like this is going into my own supervision, describing the case. But I'm just saying is that it's
That's
very,
fine. Let's go there. It's useful. Keep going.
And so it's become very, very difficult. So I'm doing a workshop with them on Monday. I've spent an inordinate amount of time on prepping for it, putting slides together, which ordinarily I would have gone in with a flip chart. I've discovered on PowerPoint design ideas, so now I'm playing with that as well. But the amount of work that I'm putting into this, and I've got to really be able to rein myself in when my resentment comes up. And I think that it gets triggered when I hear them talk about, the salaries that they paid. They could never, yeah.
Right.
So it's internal stuff around money. But a lot of it is this context of COVID and work, and when do things start normalizing, not in a new normal, but in terms of feeling a groove and I suppose a sense of security.
So let's pause for a moment on here, because that's sort of the resentment button. Okay, so I just want to maybe offer a frame to hold us in, because we're all in this together. I mean, this is what it's like to be a human being in the transactional world. Okay, let's go to the notion of agreements. So there was an offer made. let's take yours, Gabe. It's an offer made to pay you a quarter for the work.
Yeah.
That was an offer made to you, which you accepted. Similar to the offer made to David to pay less. There was a moment in time where we can only pay you 25%. Was that right?
Yeah, but that we have reduced the amount of time of the workshop. So it feels for them that's, right, that's now justified.
Okay, but how does it feel for you?
Well, it's still the same amount of prep.
Right. So here's a question. Here's a question. Yes. So I'm using now the commercial lens and the culture of business. The culture of business. So for those who are interested, in my book, Coaching on the Axis, there is a section on culture, and it contrasts the culture of business with the culture that underlines coaching. And if we look at the culture of business, the culture of business is based in contract, the notion of an agreement. And that you can negotiate your agreement, but that your agreement is your agreement. You're engaging in a commercial reality in which they had a set of frames that they used to come to you with a lower offer, which you said you even appreciate now, because you even could understand the frame they used. What you didn't do was negotiate from your frame, and you agreed, even though you were unhappy. So that occurred, same with David. David agreed, even though he was unhappy, driven by a need for the work, right? Yeah. So you sort of supply and demand. We're going to be pure economics here. There's not a lot of supply, because I can assume, and correct me if I'm wrong, if you were as busy as you were pre-COVID, you may have said, listen, I'm pretty busy. That's not going to work for me.
Yeah, I would have referred the work.
Right. So what is happening here around this resentment is that we are attributing negative values to people and companies who are negotiating for lower rates based on the fact that supply and demand has changed. Okay, so that is really what is happening. But then because you are in a situation of low supply, therefore you are taking a lower rate, which you didn't negotiate, what you're not doing is then letting go of the resentment of your choice. Because you didn't negotiate. You didn't negotiate. So this is important, because when we take on the commercial culture of business, one of the things that's amazing in the commercial culture of business, one of the things we can respect about business as a value system, is that it's based in agreements, and that people are free. There is true freedom to negotiate in those agreements. There were no rules that said you had to accept that or not accept it. You really had free choice, but you were driven by market forces.
Yeah, so I think, Mark, there's something deeper, is that I am working with existing clients who really are in very tough situations, and I'm coaching for free and giving a lot of time. So I think that's where the resentment is coming, because it's like, I'm doing even more hours now.
Yes.
And you guys have got a lot of cash, and whereas this is all my internal stuff, and you just snap me into the reality of the contract that I accepted.
Correct. So it's about, exactly, and you've got it. You've absolutely got it. So I think what we have to appreciate is that we're in a systemic reality, a commercial systemic reality, where there's a supply and demand change. The supply of work is reduced. This is caused by the crisis created in the world by the COVID virus, which has reduced our revenues and activity. And as a result, what is perceived to be a squeeze on suppliers is actually simply an effect. It's a systemic cascade of a downturn in the economy. And yes, it is very, very unpleasant to be in the situation. It doesn't feel fair. And as David, you put it so eloquently, you feel like you're the bottom of the cascade of the shitball of consequences right down to the external provider. You didn't call it the cascade of the shitball that rolls down. This is my very eloquent metaphor.
Good one.
Good one. But I think if you, just to work psychologically with it is to recognize that this is the experience of the economic downturn. This is what it feels like to everybody. Now, there are some winners in this, and you got to watch for your envy. You got to watch your envy. Certain people are winning. Okay. That's always the case. But the vast majority of people are, difficult times are upon us. And be careful what you agree to. But at the same time, when you do agree to take a 25% fee, let go of the resentment based in, that's my agreement. I made that agreement. I take responsibility for my agreement. I chose not to negotiate. I was scared I'd lose the work if I didn't, which is maybe something to push yourself on. Because you might, when, you know, again in business, when people make an offer, they don't expect you to just accept it. It's very common practice in business to say, that's it. I understand your offer. I understand the thing. I'd like to counter offer. I can do it at 50%. Would you be prepared to do it at 50%? And yeah, I'm going to end with a little story. Howard Hughes was a very famous, is it Howard Hughes, a very famous entrepreneur. He had a right-hand man in his business. And after the Hughes empire went down, this fellow went into training, and he used to train negotiation skills. Very famous. I forgot his name, but you'll find him on the internet. And he was one of the most prolific trainers in negotiation skills in the second half of the 20th century. I attended one of his programs. He himself wasn't there. I think he may have even passed away by then. I'm not sure, but I attended one of his programs. And they tell a story, which is a factual story about this. There was an advert in a newspaper in the United States for a Cadillac that a person had put on for sale for, I think it was $100 to buy this Cadillac, second-hand Cadillac, which was worth thousands and thousands of dollars. And a journalist in this saw this ad and thought this is a ridiculous ad and was looking for a story for a newspaper. So she made contact with the seller to find out, like, well, why would you sell a Cadillac for $100? It's so dumb. Made contact, found a woman who explained that what had happened was her husband had died and had left his estate to her as the wife. But this Cadillac, she discovered in the will, was left to the husband's secret mistress. Now, what it said in the will, there was a clause, and it said the Cadillac or the sale, or the proceeds from the sale thereof. So, of course, she put an ad in the paper for $100 for the Cadillac. And a student from the local university, very few people responded. They all thought it was crazy. But a student from a local university contacted her, and bought it for $100, this Cadillac. Okay? That was the story. Now, why it's used in the negotiation skills training is the question asked to all of us who attended was, do you think that the student at the university got the best deal? Raise your hand. And everyone raised their hand and said, amazing deal, unbelievable best deal. The negotiating trainer said, no, he did not. The question is, could he have got an even better deal? And the answer is yes, because can you imagine he went there and said, I'll give you $1 for the car. What would she have said? She would have said, yes, I'll take that dollar. Okay. And so he actually paid 100 times more than he should have, because that was what it was. That's the deal that was on offer. And what he failed to do was ask the question. And the question is a polite one. It's a question that says, I understand the offer. I understand where you're coming from. Very polite and respectful. I'm wondering if you would be prepared to pay more or to accept less. Right? Simply asking that question in a negotiation process in business, and then try, always respectful, always testing, not saying you won't take the current deal. And that's where, Gabby, you may have had the opportunity to say, I understand why you're wanting to go 25%. I'm just wondering if you would be prepared to pay a bit more. It is very hard out here right now. And then if the response is, well, how much more? Now suddenly you're in a process where you can work with your thing. So again, it's the psychology of business, which is sometimes missed in the profession of coaching and consulting, where we look at ourselves as professionals with these sort of set arrangements, and always feeling that we're on the back foot because we're dependent on the giving generosity of companies, rather than understanding we're in this commercial reality and we can engage in that cultural form in a very respectful way. Okay, Maha?
Very useful, thank you.
I think you wanted to say something. I saw your hand up earlier.
I did, but it's been covered in so many ways.
Okay.
It's I wear 3 hats, and of all the hats, I find that coaching is the most time consuming. It's the most responsible. It's where you feel you've got someone's destiny in your hands and they look to you for the answers, which you've got to manage, and you've got to manage expectations. So it irks to be told that this is not warranted, and we want the coaching, but we don't want to pay for it. As an attorney, I wear a legal hat and a commercial hat, and I spell it all out. For example, a 3-way meeting with the manager is part and parcel of what I offer in coaching. Some team coaching I offer, and all that is included in the price. My sense with that HR person that you were faced with, David, is that she has the DNA and the culture of that organization. And when you describe the boss who is looking to the WASP to tap into his family to get money out of, the 2 different cultures, etc., it's that bargaining, Semitic, and I'm Lebanese, so I understand it, need for more, the easiest way possible. I mean, that brief of getting him to tap into his family, I find a little bit, I resist it. I wouldn't want to work in that way, for example. But thank you very much. It's been a very thought-provoking session. Thank you, Mark.
Okay, so we actually come to 10 o'clock now, and if there is a last comment, we can take it, or question. Anyone? So David, anything from you, that you want to say? Any reflection on the session for you?
I just have a lot of relief.
Good, good. And you survived. You see, you were concerned about being subjected to a harsh crowd. But how does it feel for you now?
No, the harsh crowd is in my head.
Yes. Yes. How's that crowd doing?
Well, they're settling now. They're kind of cheering me on, going, "Yes, David, well done. You put yourself."
Well, firstly, thank you to you. We're very grateful to you, and it's always, as I say, it's always difficult to bring a case psychologically until you've actually brought it here to the session. One doesn't really appreciate the scale of anxiety. It seems when it doesn't seem to be, shouldn't be so high, but it actually does create it. And everyone who's presented has said so. Okay, thank you everyone. I really appreciate you being here again today. And the next session will be in 2 weeks. And for those of you, I am looking for a volunteer to bring a case in 2 weeks' time. So please just send me an email or message me in some way if you would like to volunteer to bring a case. Have a great weekend, and we'll see you again.
Yeah, before you go, Mark, could you just make me the admin again?
Okay, I will. Okay.
Bye, everyone. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks all.
Keep well.
Thanks very much.
Bye.
Bye. Bye. Take care.
Thanks, all.
The screen's going so fast, David. I have to wait for people to sign this every time I try and click it. Just give me a second.
Okay.
Oop, I almost had you.
Almost there.
There we go.
Thanks, mate.
And David, will you send me the recording, the link? Because I sometimes like to look at it and reflect and think.
Okay, before you go, you're going to have to. Where did the chat start? 10:27. Is that correct on your side?
Yes. Let me just, this is a file. I'll just put this file onto my computer and I'll email it to you. Okay, I've got it.
All right. The recording.
I just want to say it was such a fabulous session, and Mark, very useful for me.
Was it?
Yeah.
Good.
Lots to think about.
Good.
Okay. Cheers, guys.
Cheers, Gab. Take it easy, man. All right, I'll send this to you. Let's just see.
I had to record locally on my local drive.
Okay. So there's no way.
No, I can have you got a YouTube channel or something I can upload it to?
Put it onto your YouTube channel, but just keep the recipient closed and send me a link.
Okay, cool.
I'm sending you the chat. I'll email you the chat. Okay. Cool potatoes. All right, David, you did well. It was good. Thank you.
Cool. I'll see you 2 weeks' time.
Yes.